Hello and welcome to Presentation 5 of the WCRC webinar series. I'm Nikhil Riaz, founder and director of TSC. My area of expertise lies in the field of embedded systems, power management systems, and I also have some experience in the field of structural design and analysis. At TSC, our mission is to democratize space and make it available to the student community. As of today, despite the low cost in developing and launching your own CubeSat, substantial number of universities worldwide still cannot afford their own space projects. At TSC, our team is building low-cost subsystems, ground station systems, and developing resources that students could utilize to start their own space projects. But before a student can start their own space project, it is important that they understand what goes into it. It's important that they bridge their knowledge gaps and start understanding what's the process behind starting such a project. We believe that CANSATs could be this bridge. A CANSAT is the emulation of a CubeSat. It has the same subsystems, the same interfaces, and the development process for a CANSAT is very similar to that of a CubeSat. At TSC, we've developed two such CANSATs, and in this presentation, we'll see what these CANSATs are, what is inside a CANSAT, and the specifications of the CANSATs that we've developed. If you've been attending this presentation from the previous day, you've already heard Dusan talking about what a CANSAT is in depth. Nevertheless, I will also be talking about what a CANSAT is for a few minutes before I proceed with describing the CANSAT kits that we've made. Now, to talk about what a CANSAT is, the CANSAT was designed with an objective to teach space amateurs and university students how to work with satellite development. Now, the subsystems of a CANSAT are very similar to that of a CubeSat. They have the same interfaces, they have the same development pattern, as in the process of development for a CANSAT is very similar to that of a CubeSat. And it really helps students understand how a CubeSat is developed and what goes into development of a CubeSat. When it comes to the functionality of a CANSAT, it is a little different from that of a CubeSat in terms that a CubeSat does not return to the Earth's surface. It orbits the Earth, whereas a CANSAT, once deployed from a rocket, a drone, or a weather balloon, will return back to the surface by means of a parachute. So the lifespan of a CANSAT in the atmosphere, or the amount of time that a CANSAT spends studying the atmosphere, is far less compared to that of a CubeSat. Maybe a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds, depending on the deployment method and how high it was deployed. From this, you have already understood that a CANSAT requires a parachute. So a CubeSat does not require a parachute. And also, because the CANSAT only lasts a few minutes in the atmosphere, it doesn't require a charging unit or it doesn't require solar panels. CANSAT can be charged by plugging the CANSAT into external charging adapter on the ground once the CANSAT has returned after finishing its objective. It doesn't have to charge by any means while it is in the atmosphere. When it comes to the physical structure of a CANSAT, it is very similar to that of a beverage can. As you can see from its name, CANSAT. So the can was derived because it's the shape and size of a beverage can, which is roughly 66 mm in diameter and 115 mm in height. Although in most deployers, a little more than 150 mm is allotted to be able to insert the CANSAT into the deployer. The reason being, even the parachute has to be accommodated along with the CANSAT, and usually big parachutes do take a lot of space. So you can expect a little more than 150 mm to push the CANSAT into your deployer. Now, talking about the subsystems of the CANSAT, the subsystems of a CANSAT include the onboard computer, the electronic power system, the communication system, and the payload. The onboard computer is the brain of the CANSAT. It is responsible for handling the data. It's responsible for taking input from the sensors, processing the input, possibly even storing the input. Post this, it can also downlink the data to the ground. So it sends commands to the communication module to send telemetry, and it can also handle telecommand from the ground station. It does all the processing. It's the command and data handling center for your CANSAT. The electronic power system, one of the most important subsystems of the CANSAT, is responsible for providing electricity to all the subsystems of your CANSAT. Now, the electronic power system is designed to be extremely reliable. The reason being, even if other subsystems fail, the electronic power system has to work, because if the electronic power system fails, everything else fails. And if you have any kind of algorithms or any kind of ways you can revive your CANSAT after a failure, as long as you have power, you can do it. You can revive your CANSAT by running those algorithms or running those functions on your onboard computer to fix the problems that you face. When it comes to the communication system is responsible for handling the telemetry and telecommand. When you talk about telemetry, it is sending data that you collect on your CANSAT to the ground, and telecommand is receiving commands from the ground station to the CANSAT. The telecommands can be used to change parameters in the CANSAT, to change the program. You can even reprogram your CANSAT from ground. You can request for different types of data, or it depends on what kind of firmware you design and what kind of program you write. But the telemetry, on the other hand, is used for sending commands to the ground, say data that you acquired from your sensors, say images taken from a camera on your CANSAT. You can use telemetry to send that down to ground. You can send temperatures, you can send the pressure value, the humidity value, and any other thing that your sensor capable of supporting. Like even your GPS coordinates can be sent using telemetry, and your communication module is responsible for making that possible, because the communication module is where the RF link is established. It produces radio frequencies and modulates these frequencies with the data that you provide from your onboard computer to your communication module. And now, talking about your payload is defined by your mission objective. Your payload has a bunch of sensors and devices that are used to accomplish what you define as the mission objective. By default, in the CANSAT that we provide, there is a few different sensors that we have included. Although you can add your own sensors and your own payload to the CANSAT. For example, if you want to record the humidity of the atmosphere in varying altitudes, what you will do is put on a humidity sensor on the CANSAT so that you can record the humidity. If you want to record the volume of organic compounds in the atmosphere, then you put a VOC sensor, and so on. Talking about the different models of CANSATs that we've developed in TSC, I'm going to be talking about CANSAT Model S, which is a slightly more advanced version of the CANSAT that we've developed. We have two versions, and my colleague Tarun will be covering a little more in depth about the more basic version called the Model E. Now, if you look at the subsystems available on the Model S, you have the navigation subsystem, the OBC, EPS, sensors or payload, the communication system, the prototyping board, and of course the antenna. Now, the communication system and the antenna go hand in hand, as in they come as a pair. The communication system requires any antenna that can transmit in a certain frequency with what the communication system is tuned for. Here in this model, we have provided a dipole antenna, but if you want to change the antenna, say a turnstile antenna or a helical antenna, you can always plug out this dipole antenna module and add your own antenna module, plug it into your communication system, and then you can start transmitting through that. Is the reason why the antenna module is separate and not part of the communication system, as it's not merged with the communication system. So let's move on. Okay, now to talk a little bit about the onboard computer, which is among the top two most important subsystems in the CANSAT, because without the onboard computer, your CANSAT is essentially a brick. It does nothing. Even if any other subsystem apart from the EPS that is fails, as long as your onboard computer and your EPS are functioning, you still have a functioning CANSAT. Any data that you're collecting, maybe from a sensor, you can still store on the onboard computer's internal storage. So that is why I say that this is among the top two most important subsystems. Now, while designing the onboard computer, we have taken into account that someone might want to implement a real-time operating system, might want to implement some very complicated algorithms on the onboard computer. So what we've done is we've chosen a microcontroller that is capable of handling a lot of instructions in a given time, runs at a very high frequency so that you can run multiple instructions per second. We have chosen the Extensar dual-core 32-bit LX6 microprocessor. The reason we've chosen a dual core, so implementation of real-time operating systems is easier. That way you can run two processes at the same time simultaneously. It operates at a frequency of 240 megahertz and performs up to 600 DMIPS. That is basically the number of instructions you perform per second. Now, the microcontroller that we've chosen has wireless interfaces because the microcontroller is actually meant for IoT. It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Is useful when your CAN-SAT is not plugged into your PC, when you don't have the wires or any connections. As long as your CAN-SAT is connected to a Wi-Fi hotspot, a common Wi-Fi hotspot where your laptop is also connected, you can program it over the air, over the Wi-Fi. You don't need any physical connections to the CAN-SAT to be able to program it. Alongside that, if you choose not to use the communication module, you can always use the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth to communicate to the ground for telemetry and telecommand. All you need to do is change the antenna and maybe add something with a higher gain to be able to communicate to the ground. That way, but you can remove the communication module and you can save space within the CAN-SAT to be able to accommodate your own payload. Along with that, we also have really good memory for flash storage if you ever want to implement real-time operating systems, because real-time operating systems and big algorithms usually take up a lot of space. So we have about 4 MB worth of flash and 520 KB worth of SRAM. Overall, this microcontroller is developed by Espressif Systems and they use the Extensor processor. A lot of resources are available for this microcontroller, and I'll be talking about the resources in the later slides. Looking at the onboard computer's interfaces, this onboard computer is built for IoT and built for IoT for numerous devices. So it's not just mobile phones, it's not just automobiles, it's not just for any kind of communication IoT devices. It's built for a lot. So they've taken into account all the different kinds of interfaces that you might require. You have digital to analog converters, you have analog to digital converters, 12 channels of analog to digital converters. You have touchscreen sensor pins, you have four SPI interfaces, you have I2C interfaces, UART, UARTs, you have CAN bus 2.0. You also have infrared remote controllers. You have memory interface pins. You have Hall effect sensors and temperature sensors inbuilt. And you also have analog preamplifiers. So if any sensor that you want to connect, we are sure you'll have enough support on this microcontroller for that sensor. Now, going on to the programming resources that you have. If you've seen, Arduino IDE is one of the most popular IDEs in the market right now because of the unmatched online resources that you have, and you have millions of open source libraries. Arduino is simply one of the most easy IDEs to work with because kids start using Arduino IDE. That's the first IDE that they use to start developing microcontrollers. Arduino as an environment is amazing, and ESP32, the microcontroller that is used on our board, is supported by Arduino IDE, and you can write any code you want for ESP32 on the Arduino IDE. Given the millions of libraries that you have, there's no limitation to what you can do with ESP32 and Arduino IDE in together. Now, when it comes to MicroPython is human readable code. You look at Arduino IDE, it's mostly C++, but MicroPython has more human readable code. It's based on Python. You can do object-oriented programming, which makes it easier for you to handle variables in the environment. You have inbuilt exception and error handling. And overall, Python also is open source and has a lot of libraries for the microcontroller that we've used. And it'll make your programming more easier, but the amount of resources available is slightly limited when compared to Arduino IDE. So moving on to Espressif IDF now, I earlier mentioned that the microcontroller was developed by Espressif Systems. So any library that you cannot find in Arduino IDE or MicroPython will definitely be available in Espressif IDF because they know what their processor can do, and they've developed integrated IoT development framework for the microcontroller itself, as in they know all the functions that are required. They've taken care of all the libraries that you might possibly require. So if there's anything you cannot find in Arduino MicroPython, IDF is the place to go. And of course, it's for IoT applications, so that makes any kind of IoT related things that you want to do with the CAN-SAT much easier. Now, moving on to WhiteCat IDE and Lua RTOS. Now, Lua RTOS is implemented in WhiteCat IDE. WhiteCat IDE, unlike Arduino and MicroPython, is a graphical user interface. What I mean is for people who don't know how to write code, who find it difficult to program, WhiteCat IDE makes it easier for them because it's mostly a drag and drop interface where you just, if you want to implement a loop, you drag and drop a loop and you can implement that loop or put functions within that loop that you want to execute. And real-time operating systems can be implemented on WhiteCat IDE because we have Lua RTOS, which is specially designed for the ESP devices developed by Espressif Systems. Even those who find it very difficult to program can implement real-time operating systems, which is otherwise a very complicated task using WhiteCat IDE. Now talking about Blink, let's say you downlink some data to your ground station and you want to display this data on a graphical user interface. You can use Blink because Blink is an IoT tool that lets you add graphical user interface to any kind of device that you want. You have a mobile application where you can design your graphical interface using drag and drop. You can put on gauges. You can put on text displays. You can add buttons. You can you can send data to your CANSAT by clicking these buttons, depending on the kind of firmware that you write. So Blink makes this job easier for you because even on their website they have a code creation tool. So if you don't know how to code, you can always go to the Blink website and try and figure out. So you enter some parameters and you get a ready-made code. Although the code has to be edited a little more by you, the basic code that you require to implement Blink is available on the website. So these are a few of the programming resources. There are plenty more, but these are the most popularly used. So I'm just mentioning these. Now moving on. Okay, so now talking about the electronic power system, designed this electronic power system to be extremely reliable. We've taken into consideration that you might want to send the CANSAT to altitudes with really high altitudes with the weather balloon, where the temperatures are extremely low. So the controllers and the devices used on the electronic power system are capable of handling extremely low and extremely high temperatures of down to minus 40 degrees and up to 125 degrees Celsius. The controllers meet JEDEC standards for electrostatic discharge, that is for the human body model plus or minus 2000 volts, and for the charge device model plus or minus 500 volts, which is far beyond what the standard states is required. When you look at the features of the electronic power system, you have extremely low quiescent current. That means when no other subsystem is drawing any power, the electronics power system itself doesn't draw too much power from the batteries. That way, the idle power loss or the leakage current is very low. We have buck boost converters with input voltage range of 2 volts all the way to 16 volts with an efficiency of up to 95%. We've designed this EPS to make sure that under any circumstances there is no short circuit, there's no over temperature issues. So it's pre-programmed with an over temperature cutoff with over current cutoff. That way, if any short circuits happen on any of the subsystems, the power to the whole CANSAT is completely cut off to make sure that no device gets damaged. If the temperature increases or decreases to beyond a certain extent, the powers are again cut off to make sure no other devices get damaged. And all the devices used on this, like all the external peripheral devices apart from the controller, that is the resistors, the capacitors, and the inductors, are high precision devices with the capacitors have only 5% tolerance, and the resistors have a tolerance of 0.5%. Now, looking at the power rails that are available on this electronic power system, you have the 3.3 volts and the 5 volts rail with 2 amps current output from each rail. That gives you 10 watts on the 5 volts rail and 6.6 watts on the 3.3 volts rail, which gives you the ability to run any high power devices that you have. So if you want to run a really high resolution camera on board, you can do that because you have enough power to be able to run it. You can even plug in a GoPro for charge on your electronic power system, and it'll be able to run the GoPro. So that's a little bit about the electronic power system. You'll be able to find more details on the website when we put up the data sheets. Moving on to the communication system. The communication subsystem is designed around Semtech's LoRa protocol. LoRa is usually used for IoT, but it can be used for other applications as well. It supports FSK modulation, GFSK, MSK, GMSK, and LoRa and OOK modulation. So even if you don't want to use LoRa's modulation technique, you can always use standard FSK to transmit your data. There is an optional dual modem setup which allows full duplex communication. That means one module dedicated for uplink and one module dedicated for downlink. Or you could have one option with just one module which can be used for uplink and downlink by framing. So like 5 seconds for uplink and 5 seconds for downlink. If you want, there's interrupt pins available on the module that can be connected to the onboard computer. So when you receive an uplink, it triggers an interrupt and you can just read the data, and the rest of the time you can perform downlink. Now the frequencies are available on this module range from 410 to 525. You have 868 megahertz, you have 915 megahertz. These frequencies can be programmed using the code. You can change between a few frequencies, but usually you have a center frequency of 433 or 868. One of the modules lets you move all the way from 410 to 525, but it's advisable to stay within the center frequency of 433 because the antenna is designed for that. But the antenna can also be changed as per your requirement. The module works with an operating voltage of 3.3 volts. That means you're using the 3.3 volts rail both for your onboard computer and your communication module. The output power is between 14 dBm and 20 dBm. It has two power amps, which means you can use either 14 dBm or 20 dBm or anywhere within that range. Uh, the module has sensitivity down to minus 148 dBm, which means even in really bad conditions, you can still work with this module. And it has great data rates of up to 300 kbps using the regular FSK, if you're not using LoRa, that is. So, to look at a few more features about why we chose LoRa for this communication, LoRa has some amazing features, including sensitivity. With the sensitivity of all the way down to minus 148 dBm, even in harsh circumstances where you might have trees, you might have buildings, you might not have perfectly tuned antennas, or any other things like clouds that might be interfering between your CANSAT and your ground station, you will be able to receive a signal and be able to decode it because the sensitivity allows a really good link margin. You also have amazing range. We've seen modules with power outputs of just 20 dBm performing perfectly in ranges of 30 miles away. You have amazing power consumption, and by amazing, I mean really low power consumption. Because the LoRa devices are designed for IoT applications, which may require extremely long battery lives, where once the LoRa device is inside, once the LoRa device has been turned on, it doesn't turn off for extended periods of time. So you can have battery lives of up to 10 years. You have amazing security with AES encryption. You have a high capacity, meaning unlike Sigfox, which has limited number of messages per day, LoRa has no such limit. You can have millions of messages per base station, so you can have basically continuous communication between your devices. It's mobile, as in it has really good mobility. Even if your CANSAT is moving and your ground station is moving, there's no issue with the reception because despite the motion, your link stays established. And these are the few reasons why we chose LoRa. There are of course a lot more advantages that I could talk about, but for the scope of this presentation, these advantages are sufficient. Talking about the sensor board, or in other words, the payload, um, we've included some of the default sensors that are used on CANSATs, which include the 9-axis inertial measurement unit that has accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetometer, that is 3 axes each, X, Y, and Z. We have the humidity, pressure, and temperature sensor. We have a volatile organic compound sensor. We have an equivalent carbon dioxide sensor. Now, equivalent carbon dioxide means it's not the actual carbon dioxide sensor. It cannot be used in the lab. It gives you a rough value of what the carbon dioxide concentration could be based on some other calculations. We have a hydrogen, that is H2 sensor. All the sensors communicate with the onboard computer through the I2C interface. It only uses two pins, and all the other pins are available for you for development. So not many pins are used. We're not using any SPI or UART interfaces. Most of the interfaces are left free. Another system that we have that has been included by default is the navigation subsystem. We used precision u-blox GNSS sensor that can receive constellations of three satellites at a single time. It can receive signals from BDU, Galileo, GLONASS, and GPS. Now, the reason for the navigation system being on board is if you were to deploy your CanSat at a very high altitude, it is possible that while returning, it might get carried away by the wind and might go into some bushes or some place where it's difficult to look for the CanSat. But given the navigation subsystem, you'll always know roughly which location the CanSat has landed with an accuracy of 2.5 meters. That way, the radius that you have to look at before you can find your CanSat, before you can retrieve your CanSat, is just 2.5 meters, and that reduces it from maybe a kilometer or half a kilometer, which is much better. Even this sensor works on UART and I2C, which is user selectable. There are jumpers on board that you can solder or desolder to work with UART or I2C. If you want UART for maybe your own payload, some other subsystem that you want to add by yourself, you can always choose I2C to communicate with the navigation subsystem. But if the UART is free, you can always use UART because UART is what is normally used for communication with any GPS modules. We have the prototyping board now. The prototyping board is compatible with the CanSat bus. When I talk about the bus, I mean the connectors that we have that go all the way from the top of the board to the bottom of the board and connect all the interfaces from the onboard computer to all the other subsystems on the board. So the prototyping board is meant for you to explore, meant for you to add any payload that you wish. All the interfaces are available on this board as well, and you can use any, you can connect your payload to any pin of the onboard computer that you want to through this board. We use a standard spacing of 100 mil or 100 thousandths of an inch, which is also 2.54 mm, which is what industry standard uses for most header pins, and that makes it easier for you to plug in any sensor that you find in the market into this and use it with the onboard computer and program accordingly. But of course, this is not the only option you have to add your own payload. You can always design your own board. We will provide design files, so you can design your own board and get it printed, and add sensors directly to the board without having to use the perforated board or the prototyping board. So that's about the prototyping board. Moving on to the antenna. Now, the antenna board, as I said, comes with the communication module. What we do is we provide you with a dipole because linearly polarized, and you can always use a Yagi antenna on ground to communicate with the CanSat. So a Yagi antenna, of course, gives you higher gain in a single direction, giving you more range. If you ever want to change to a different kind of antenna, helical, turnstile, patch antenna, you can of course do that because it's modular in design. You can plug this antenna out and add your own antenna. By default, we include antenna that is tuned to 434 megahertz, which is also applicable for 868 megahertz. And what you can do is, if you want to change the frequency, you can increase or decrease the length of these rods, which are screwed in. So you can remove the screws, add your own rods. You can also use flexible flexible tape measures that can be folded, and once they deploy, they unfold. But if you do not require to have antennas that have to unfold during deployment and fold when in the deployer, you can always use some rigid material for the antenna. So that's a little bit about the antenna design. Moving on to some of the additional features that we have, we've made sure to cut slots in the aluminum tube that we provide with the kit to give easy access to the programming connectors. So you can program the CanSat by using a wire without having to take the entire thing apart. Apart from this, as I mentioned earlier, when I was talking about the OBC, is you can also program the OBC on the air. So you don't really need wires to program it. You can just connect it to a common Wi-Fi hotspot and program it. Along with this, we also provide a grounded hole. Now, this grounded hole actually has shielding around it. So if you want to pass any wires through from any subsystem that is on top to any subsystem on the bottom of the CanSat, you can pass it through this hole. Because it's grounded, even if there's any interference caused by those wires, the interference is slightly absorbed. It won't enter into the other subsystems and cause any interference within those subsystems, at least to a certain extent, not completely, but the grounding does help to a small extent. So this is the same hole that we use to take the RF connection from the SMA connector on the communication system to the RF connector in the antenna board. So you can always use any other wires that you require, say for the battery connectors. If you have any payload that requires a USB connection or any other kind of pins, you can always connect it to the prototyping board and then connect it to your payload in the bottom. Alongside that, you can also see the black vertical. Let me just try and highlight that here. So you can see these buses that go all the way from the top to the bottom. Now those buses carry communication from top of the CANSAT all the way to the bottom of the CANSAT, and also connect to the onboard computer that is present within the CANSAT. Now that means that all the boards are interchangeable, so you can, if you want the onboard computer all the way on top, you can put the onboard computer all the way on top. If you want to put it all the way in the bottom, you can put it all the way in the bottom. You can keep interchanging the boards any way you want, and the communication will still be perfectly fine, because everything is connected to everything on this CANSAT. I mean, all the subsystems are connected to all the other subsystems on the CANSAT. That gives you the freedom to switch your boards around. So that's another additional feature. There's a little bit of an animation of how this structure is put together. So that's a spread out view of all the subsystems in the CANSAT right now. That's as much as I have to explain about CANSAT Model S version 1. Thank you so much for being a part of this. This is Nikhil signing off.
Hi everyone, I'm Tarun, working as embedded systems engineer at TSE. I also work on software development, drone design, and testing. As you already heard about the advanced kit from my colleague Nikhil, I'm going to give you an overview of the basic kit. If a person is beginner or new to field of CANSATs, this basic kit helps him build knowledge in electronics, programming, as well as structural design. We have built this kit keeping students in mind to make it easier for them to get from solving to launching a CANSAT in no time. You can learn and experiment as you wish to, and we have made debugging and prototyping much more easier. Most of the components used in this kit are through-hole COTS components, so it's easier to solder. Now let's look at the kit. Here you can see how basic CANSAT looks. All the subsystems provided with the kit are listed here. Now let's talk about the structure of the CANSAT. Structure of the CANSAT is one of the most important aspects as it ensures the safety of the subsystems inside it. Basic CANSAT is equipped with the outer casing that protects the subsystems from the environment or in case of hard landing. There is a provision on the structure to hook up a parachute in case you want to recover the CANSAT safely, or you can hook up a high altitude balloon as per your need. Slots are cut into the structure for ease of accessibility and to accommodate the foldable dipole antenna. Now, let's break up the CANSAT and see what's inside it. This is the breakup of all subsystems and what's included in the kit. There are 5 major subsystems and 1 prototyping board, each divided into different layers so that they can be modified or upgraded if needed. First subsystem is onboard computer or OBC. It's responsible to communicate with all other subsystems and handle data and computation. OBC has to be programmed to perform certain tasks. I'll talk more about programming later in the video. Second, to power the CANSAT, we have electronic power supply or EPS. We had to ensure adequate amount of power is supplied to all subsystems in an efficient manner. The data in the CANSAT is either saved on board or downlinked to the ground station. To downlink the data, we have communication subsystem. CANSATs are commonly used for research. They carry payloads that perform different tasks. As payload with the kit, we offer a couple of sensors to experiment with. We have also equipped the CANSAT with GPS tracking system to ensure recovery and reusability. Lastly, we have prototyping board. Now let's look at what each subsystem offers. The onboard computer is based on a bare-bone Arduino Uno design. Here you can see Atmega 328P in the middle. It's an 8-bit AVR RISC architecture based microcontroller. It has 32 kilobytes of internal flash memory where the program is stored. It also has 1 kilobyte of EEPROM and 2 kilobytes of SRAM. The microcontroller has sufficient number of interfaces: 23 general purpose IO lines, 32 general purpose working registers, 3 timers, serial programmable USART, SPI serial port, I2C, 6-channel 10-bit ADC. These are some of the features the microcontroller offers. Still, there are plenty of features to be exploited to make the microcontroller work function more efficiently, like software selectable power modes. The interfaces from the Atmega 328P are carried by the bus interface so that it can communicate with the other subsystems. The microcontroller is provided with a 16 MHz external crystal. The OBC can be programmed using the TTL breakout pins on the board. External USB to TTL converter is used for it. Electronic power supply or EPS powers the whole CANSAT by drawing the power from the batteries on board and steps down the voltage. It can supply 1.5 amps of current at 5 volts and zero point 0.8 amps of current at 3.3 volts. There are status LEDs that indicate the output of the EPS. The operating input voltage range is from 6.5 volts to 20 volts. The total efficiency of the system is approximately 72%. The output power rails from the EPS are carried by the bus interface so that all the subsystems receive power. The communication subsystem consists of LoRa module, which is used for ultra-long distance spread spectrum communication. Its operating frequency is 433 MHz to 525 MHz. We can get data rates up to 300 kilobytes per second. Packets of up to 256 bytes can be transmitted. Downlinking the data is very easy and it has low power consumption. It supports SPI half duplex communication to interface with the OBC. An external foldable dipole antenna is connected to the module using pigtail to transmit and receive data. An experimental payload is also provided with the kit. The payload comprises of 6 degree of freedom IMU and humidity sensor. The IMU is a combination of 3-axis gyro and 3-axis accelerometer MEMS sensor. It has an inbuilt digital motion processor DMP and FIFO to process the data from the sensor. It supports both I2C and SPI interfaces. External sensors are accessible through auxiliary master I2C bus. With the help of the IMU, the attitude, G-force, and drop rate of the CANSAT can be determined. This system is also known as an attitude determination system. The humidity sensor measures relative humidity, barometric pressure, and ambient temperature. The humidity sensor also supports I2C and SPI interfaces. These data from the sensors can be stored on board or downlinked to the ground station as telemetry for analysis. For tracking the CANSAT, we are using high performance GPS receiver. It's a 50-channel receiver and has 2.5 meter accuracy. The CANSAT can be recovered easily using this tracker. The last location data transmitted to the ground station before CANSAT lands on the ground gives us very small 5-meter search radius. This way, the CANSAT can be reused for future missions. The kit also includes prototyping perforated board so you can add additional sensors if required. The board design follows conventional 2.54 mm hole spacing, so it's compatible with COTS components. For example, sensors like air quality or airspeed sensors can be added, or even an external data logging memory. When we come to programming the OBC, we have to use a USB to TTL converter. The converter is connected to the TTL breakout pins on the OBC. As the OBC is based on Arduino Uno and comes with a preloaded Arduino bootloader, it is compatible with multiple IDEs. Some of the popular IDEs are Arduino IDE, Platform IO, and Visiono. Arduino IDE is open source based on C and C++ language. The IDE supplies multiple software libraries which makes it easy during development. Platform IO. Platform IO is open source unified debugger. Supports C and C++ intelligent code completion. It has a built-in terminal and serial monitor. And if you're new to programming or have very little experience, Visiono is a popular IDE to use. It's a visual-based programming environment using OpenWire technology where everything is linked together by a series of diagrams and pins. It has a drag and drop interface. Here is a final stack-up of all subsystems without outer casing. There are 5 subsystems. First subsystem is a GPS receiver. Second, OBC. Third, payload. Fourth, EPS. And fifth, comms. All the interfaces are carried by these 4 buses around the CANSAT. These are the battery connectors. Any external wires can be routed through these holes that are provided through the stack. The OBC is programmed using these TTL breakout pins. The last part is launching the CANSAT. CANSATs are generally launched using sounding rockets, drones, or high altitude balloons. Launch height varies from a couple of meters to several kilometers. The kits are tested and experimented by multiple students of various age groups. They have come up with creative and innovative payloads. And we want to share this experience and introduce the CANSAT kits to the world. Thank you all.